This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
I'd like to call the Tuesday, September 25th, 2018 North Haven Fire Commission meeting to order. Our first bit of business would be to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for being here this evening. We have, it's always just a great pleasure for us on the Fire Commission to swear in a new member of our volunteers, and this evening we have the great pleasure of swearing in Jacob Michaels to come before. Certainly, Jacob, I'm sure you've accomplished all the particular goals and objectives as were laid out by the administration. And certainly, again, it's always a pleasure when your parents of young people are here. We know what it takes to bring a young person to this point. Having a mom and dad sacrificing their time and effort in developing the goals and objectives and courtesy and respect and the willingness to share that with the residents of our town is absolutely admirable, and we certainly appreciate that. We wish that many other young people would follow in your steps. Mom and Dad, thank you very much for all of the effort that you've put forth. We certainly appreciate it. Having said that,
Chairman, a couple of things quickly on
I'd like the
Jake.
Chief to say a few things.
Because this is an incredible person. He's really on a path for success here and setting himself up for one heck of a career. Jacob and I met some time ago and kind of had a conversation about what it would take to become a career fireman, and he's gone about that. He's taken Fire 1, he's taken EMT, and he's in now week 5 of a 14-week recruit program that he's paying for himself to put himself through recruit school, the same school that we put our career firemen to. So it's a matter of time until Jacob is hired, and hopefully North Haven can be in the running. Depends on the timing, but I just think that's really worth bringing out. There's only been 4 volunteers in the last, let's say, 14 years that have put themselves through recruit school, and he'll be the 5th. So looking forward, he'll make a great hire.
Absolutely. Well,
I'll write you a letter.
Absolutely. Well, at this point, I'd like you to ask you to please step forward so we can swear you in. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear or affirm
I solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Connecticut
and the state of Connecticut
and the rules and regulations of the North Haven Fire Department
and the rules and regulations of the North Haven Fire Department
as written and amended
as written in amendment
by the Board of Fire Commissioners,
by the Board of Fire Commissioners,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties of volunteer firefighter
and discharge the duties of volunteer firefighter
of the Town of North Haven Fire Department to the best of my ability.
to the Town of North Haven Fire Department to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
No, not yet. Not yet. That's next.
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
We're going to take a brief recess. I'd like to reconvene the Tuesday, September 25th, 2018 North Haven Fire Commission meeting. I'd like to ask for the approval of the minutes from the Board of Fire Commission meeting held on 6/26/18. Do I hear a second? Any, all in favor? Opposed? So moved. The Chief's report. Excuse me.
Chief's report. This is going to cover since we last met as a commission, which occurred in the end of June. This is going to cover quite a significant period of time. I'll try to break it down for you the best I can. We'll start with alarms. Year-to-date alarms as of 2017, we're at 3,196 incidents. Year-to-date as of this year, I'm at 3,416. It's a difference of 220 alarms additional. Again, I think there's some value in discussing 5-year stats. So 5 years ago in 2013, we were at 1,953 alarms, which puts us at 447 more alarms as of today versus 5 years ago at this time. Since our last Board of Fire Commission meeting, again, which occurred at the end of May, we provided ALS assistance to the hospital. Our paramedic has run into the hospital 51 different times, and we've had 53 incidents to the highway. I'm referring to the highway as anything on Route 40, Route 15, or I-91. 60% of our calls were EMS related. Again, that continues to be different than the 75% that is sometimes referenced by various people. It's 60% of our calls were EMS related. Something to keep in mind is as of early July, we conducted quite a few changes to our CAD system, which is the computer-aided dispatch system. It's allowing us now to dispatch resources, specific resources for incidents, versus having to dispatch resources based on geographic location. So it's now both geographically based and it's resource based. That's what that really does, is that allows us to track the dispatching of an apparatus or the occurrence of a call and whether in fact or not an apparatus responded. So I'll be able to, as we move forward, have some better clarity on some different things that seem to kind of continue to creep up on us. But with that new system, we can account for 22 incidents since the second week in July when this went live. We can account for 22 incidents that the fire department had no units to send and or significantly delayed in sending units. So what happens now is when an incident appears within dispatch screen, if there are no units available that would be assigned to that call, again, based on resource type, then it automatically assigns a fake unit, if you will, just for tracking purposes. And that's now we can track how many times that more or less fictitious unit was dispatched, and we're able to provide that number. So it's valuable to have that as we move forward with further discussions. So again, this accounts for approximately 1,164 incidents since our last meeting, 334 of which were overlapping, which is consistently 28% of our calls are overlapping with one another. To cover some of the calls, we had 13 building fires, 21 different fires contained within the structure itself. Those are typically going to be cooking fires, 10 motor vehicle fires, a rail car fire, 76 motor vehicle accidents with injuries, only 16 that were found to be without injuries, and 131 false alarms. Something to keep in mind with false alarms is we're never dispatched to a false alarm. We're dispatched to a fire alarm or a CO alarm or any of those different types of dispatches. We close it out as a false alarm. It's then recorded as a false alarm, but we're never dispatched for the purposes of responding to a false alarm. It starts off as the report of an alarm sounding, alarm activation, and so forth. Those may account for malicious acts, bomb scares that were unfounded, unintentional transition of the alarm, carbon monoxide, which was unfounded, smoke detector activation, and then you saw the occurrence of malfunctions. That covers the alarms. The current budget, this year, last time, we were at 28.2%. As of this point this year, we're at 27.9%. Since our last Board of Fire Commission meeting, we've collected $116,594 in fire fees as part of the building process, which allows us to show a total since we started collecting fees approximately 18 months ago of approximately $1.3 million. The Fire Marshal's Office, again covering the same span of time. 106 inspections have been conducted. There were 20 re-inspections, which accounts for 126 total. We issued 54 code violations We found since that 26 have been corrected. We've issued 1 arrest warrant, 2 abatement orders, and we've reviewed 128 different plans and permits. Again, covering a 3-month period. This covers since the end of June, so we were busy for some period of time inspecting fireworks displays in various retail locations throughout town. There's specific code to meet when you're selling fireworks. The Amazon property continues to keep the fire marshal's office quite busy. We're out there nearly on a daily basis inspecting. At this point, it's been primarily water and some of the structural members that are taking place within the building. That's going to start to transition to a lot more on the inside, things like the sprinklers themselves, the conveyors, egress, things of that sort. The Slate School kept the fire marshal's office rather busy, opening that in the aggressive schedule that they gave for themselves. Open burning, we continue to address issues of open burning complaints. Those are typically followed up with the fire marshal's office if they're recurring addresses. And the only thing I think that's worth bringing up as well is that one thing that with the addition of the inspector approximately 18 months ago, what we've been able to do is really track down alarms. So there are times that, again, we're dispatched for fire alarms. There were times that some of those addresses were recurring addresses over the years, and the ability to have the inspector and recognize that trends are occurring with the same address, we're able to send the inspector out. He's following up on a property. We're really cutting down on the number of false alarms that we're responding to that are occurring in the same address. To cover training, a couple things on training. We've been working with the United States Coast Guard, and this occurred because of a couple of meetings that were attended about a year and a half ago, in which there were some funding opportunities available for North Haven if we were to become part of the Port of New Haven security plan. And in order to do that, we have to be trained by the Coast Guard. We have to be built into their plan for response, both in terms of security and searches and so forth. We do have access to the Quinnipiac River, and we do have direct access to the harbor. And looking at sitting down with the Coast Guard, sitting down with members of New Haven Fire Department, we were able to identify that there was a need for the town of North Haven to get written in to the security plan. That's come with it now training approximately a year later. Our staff has been getting trained on search patterns and so forth, and we expect some funding opportunities to become available in the near future. And this is a pretty big step for the membership to be working with the Coast Guard and being recognized as certainly not a coastal community, but a coastal community that's impacted by the harbor. In a matter of minutes, we can be in the harbor through our own waterway. We continue to train with hazmat and working on bringing our members both initial training and recertification training in various levels of hazardous materials, and we continue to work with pre-planning. Is keeping us quite busy right now with the amount of new construction taking place in town. I have a couple of items for executive session, and that is all I have for a chief's report.
Any questions of the chief regarding his report?
Chief, can you just explain for the public what the burning ordinance is and what's required to get a permit, and what should people do if they see burning or smell burning?
Sure. So the burning ordinance that can be found online allows you to burn your regular Class A combustibles, your wood and so forth, and nothing else. There's a certain perimeter that it has to meet, and there's certain times of the day that wouldn't be allowed, pending things like high wind warning, unhealthy health index for the air quality, and a high fire danger. Any of those 3 categories meet, you cannot do any burning whatsoever. That includes cooking for a campfire, any of that. You can take it, so that's your routine, day-to-day, burning in a chiminea, burning in a campfire, that type of thing. To anything above and beyond that, you have to apply for a burn permit, which you've seen an increase in the last few months, due in large part to the storm that occurred back in May. And the way that some people found to get rid of their brush was through the burning. So that certainly has increased. To qualify for that, there has to be another set of rules followed in terms of distance from the property. The same three factors still apply in terms of air quality and fire danger, but you're then allowed to burn much more in excess of the ordinance.
But all this is spelled out online,
Yes, correct, sir.
whether the town or. fire
Town
department?
ordinance, yeah. Yeah, there's a burning permit process for the address on the town website, and there's also the burning ordinance addressed in the town website.
And another question people have asked me is, why for medical calls do all these trucks go out? I try to explain because of what you explained to me, but for the public's information, if you could just explain why that occurs.
Yeah, so I know that with a $1.2 million ladder truck in town now, too, people are taking notice of where it is and where it isn't. You know, in North Haven, we've since 1974 have staffed 3 apparatus out of headquarters to respond to incidents. That has been a ladder truck, a rescue, and an engine for the last 20 years or so. That is what we have available to respond to both EMS calls as they're occurring and fire calls as they're occurring. The same 3 apparatus are responsible for both call types. The order of medicals, for the most part, with few exceptions, is the rescue responds first, the engine responds second, the truck responds third. If the rescue is tied up, the engine will go. If the engine is tied up, the truck will go. There are some incidents where I have to send 2 apparatus, and that may be because of the nature of the illness taking place, for example, a pending CPR, or it may be because of location on a highway where we need to position apparatus to protect personnel and anybody who was in an accident. So those are the reasons why those 3 apparatus respond to calls, and based on the call volume, which we've trended as seeing rising over the last several years, the call volume is beginning to exceed the available resources to respond. So you're seeing all 3 units tied up.
So when they see the ladder truck out there, they can assume that that's the 3rd medical call at that same.
There is one exception where we've put the ladder truck out first due on public assist calls, and that is only that have potential of being medical in nature. Lift assist is what they're commonly referred to as, and that is only so that I don't tie up the 1 paramedic on a rescue on what I know is a non-emergent medical, most likely medical incident. That is the only exception. Otherwise, yes, it is safe to assume that if that is not occurring, that if you see the truck responding to a medical, that it is at least a 3rd medical taking place at that point.
Thank you. Yes, Chief, you mentioned a large number of false alarms. We have an ordinance in town. After the 2nd or 3rd, we're supposed to be charging these people. How much money do we bring in on false alarms?
Yeah, so the nice thing with the inspector now doing that is before that ordinance really has the ability to kick in, the inspector, as I elaborated on, is responding to the address and addressing the issue. Prior to that ordinance was not ever really that exercised in the last 15 years. There was not, the ordinance has been there. It's never really been that practice.
The reason I'm asking is why isn't it enforced?
Well, there's little need for it now in the last year and a half, because before it gets to that point where the ordinance would kick in a fee or a fine, the inspector is already recognizing that same address is coming in multiple times, and he's already meeting with the property owner and minimizing the responses. But it is something that we can revisit. It's certainly something that remains an option as we move forward.
Well, if we have it, we should use it to bring in some funds.
Sure.
Yeah, and you know as well as I do, there are a lot of repeats on false alarms, especially in the senior housing. It belongs to the town, but they should still be able to be fined because they're breaking the law.
Well, that's the other thing that you find, is that sometimes some of the repeat offenders are nonprofit, state, or town buildings.
Just 2 things, I just wanna, I'm sorry, and I apologize, I missed 2012, how many calls do we have?
2013, we were at 1,953 alarms as of this point.
So 2,000 alarms I rounded off, and now we're at 3,400.
3416.
So we picked up 1,400 more calls.
Uh,
I think like 2,900 at this time.
yeah, I can get back and double check.
That's a lot of calls we picked up.
Yeah, it
So the guys are really out there round the clock.
there's no doubt that the numbers are trending up.
Right. And the other thing I want to mention, that's a fantastic number from the fire marshal's office, 1.3 million. We know it sounds even better? Almost $17,000 a week he's taking in. I mean, that's just a tremendous achievement for your department. I mean, hats off to you on that.
We're
$17,000 a week.
You know, the thing is with the fire fees is that, you know, it seems like some of the questioning has gone away from when we had first implemented it, but the fact of the matter is our staff is, and we're only doing this for commercial industrial only, where the fire code applies, but our staff is heavily involved in remodel and new construction, just as a building department, who have always charged fees. So it was only prudent of us to again, being fiscally conservative and thinking, you know, in terms of new initiatives to pursue that. And I can tell you that I field about a phone call every other month or so from an area elected official, an area fire marshal, fire chief, asking how we did it and how successful it is. And as recently as last month, an abutting town said they're going to be adopting the same exact thing in terms of fees.
I mean, it's a great idea you had. Again, 1.3 million is a lot of money in 18 months.
Well, it's certainly-
Almost 17,000 a week sounds. And think about it, if we're doing all that building, that's all the more work our firefighters are doing to respond. So,
No question.
good job.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to accept the chief's report.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All in favor? Opposed? So moved. Correspondence.
I only have the one correspondence that's listed on the agenda. This is above and beyond the routine day-to-day correspondences that the office receives. This is a resignation letter from a volunteer with West Ridge, and it's because he accepted a full-time position with one of the casino fire departments. That's the only correspondence that I have. So we wish him luck and hope that he does well. And it's unfortunate that we're losing a great volunteer, but I know that he's off to a great career.
Very nice. Any commissioners receive any verbal or written communications?
Yeah, verbal. I received several phone calls about Region 7 being gone for over a month. And the people that called and wanted to know why. I assumed it was because I didn't know until the other day that Engine 1 was down. So I said, I'll investigate and let you know. There was an oil spill over here on Wilson Avenue, half a block away from my house. I walked down there, I said, where's one? Somebody said it blew up. I don't know if it blew up or it's just on the surface.
So, yeah, we're continuing to have trouble with our current Engine 1, which is our newest engine in our career engine. The report I have as of recent is that it was a head gasket for the second time, and it's being repaired. It's been out of service, I wouldn't quite say for a month, but probably 2.5, 3 weeks nonetheless. And Engine 7 is one of the newer apparatus in its fleet and is therefore replacing Engine 1 because it's newer, it can hold everything that Engine 1 does, and it's reliable. So we have a policy that outlines based on what apparatus is going out of service, what apparatus is supposed to be backfilling it. So this particular station, seeing as though Engine 7 has replaced Engine 1 for some period of time, we've taken our reserve engine, which is intended for this purpose, and placed our reserve engine in service at this station, which is 30-plus years old. But that's what we have for a reserve engine, and that's what's been running.
It seems like you're always pulling something out of here when something goes wrong downtown.
Yeah, it's based on the fact that Engine 7 is the newest volunteer engine and can carry the most equipment.
Chief, there are 2 other firehouses in town.
Right.
Okay, we're running Engine 7 day and night. Look what happened to Engine 5.
I
And
need,
the driver's in Chavonis.
yeah, sure, I need to replace apparatus is what I need to do, so that this can stop happening. But at the same time, I need to be able to replace, seeing Engine 1 is running the most of anything in town, and it needs to have something that's reliable, that can respond in its place. That only leaves us with 7 and 2.
I understand. But now, we bought Engine 1 off a lot. It wasn't built to our specifications.
That's right,
And because the town don't want to spend the money,
right.
we, as a unit, we have to suffer because we're getting something that we really can't use that long.
There's something to be said for that, Commissioner. The engine trouble that we're having is thought by some, and I'm not one to speak of speculation, although I'm also not a mechanic, so I would never be able to speak 100% ever, is a thought is because it was a demo engine that we purchased off the lot, as you indicated, that it was not spec'd out specifically for North Haven. As we did with the ladder truck, we spent a long time identifying what was needed and building it from the ground up. That was not done with that engine, and there's a speculation that the engine itself, now not the apparatus, the mechanical engine itself, may be underpowered for the apparatus itself, which is why we're experiencing the trouble that we are. Again, this being the second time that we've had a head gasket issue. I think it goes to show that when we purchase apparatus, we can't put ourselves in a position where we've come down to the point that we absolutely need something so bad that we're going to just go buy whatever's on the lot. That doesn't work. We spent a lot of money as well. I don't have the figure in front of me, but I've been asked to research it before, and this is why I'm confident in saying that. We spent tens of thousands of dollars even after we purchased Engine 1, making it something that was available for us to use. Engines are constantly something that need to be outfitted specific for the department based on what it's going to carry, what it's going to respond to, the terrain that it's traveling on. And we spent a lot of money to make Engine 1 work for us.
I think your point is well taken, Commissioner. You as well as a result, and as well as the rest of our commission, have always advocated looking to be proactive as it pertains to replacing apparatus. Unfortunately, even though there was a state regulation that came down, that wasn't interpreted in the way that the town attorney interpreted it and the way we understood it as well. So obviously, until these pieces of apparatus are no longer roadworthy based on the DOT, they're going to continue to be in service, and we're going to continue to spend a significant amount of money keeping them on the road. And once they do break down, as the chief indicated, our back then will be against the wall because it won't give us the ample time to spec it out and have a apparatus built to our specifications, which the ladder truck took a year, close to, or a little bit more. So, it takes a long time before we're able to get the piece of apparatus that is necessary for us. But your point is well taken, thank you. I have a correspondence from Mary White that I think I'll read during public comment. There was a couple of questions that she submitted. Mary White was expected to be here at the meeting, and she might very well show up before the end of public comments. No other correspondence? Discussion of unfinished business for the department.
Unfinished business, I have a couple of items on your agenda. The first being the FEMA disaster declaration. President Trump approved the request for public assistance disaster declaration on August 20th. And I attended a meeting with the Director of Finance on September 12th in Southbury, where we obtained documents. We've already submitted documents to begin to capture some of the expenses incurred by the town, both in response to the tornado and straight line winds that occurred on May 15th, and also some of the expenses related to the cleanup that remains ongoing. Again, while you may not see a whole lot of debris street side anymore, Yeah, the location where that was all brought to is part of that cleanup now as well. So there's ongoing efforts to capture those expenses. The individual assistance application was denied by FEMA. Something to keep in mind, and forgive me if you've heard this before, is this is not specific to the town, this is specific to the county. The county has a threshold, every county in Connecticut has a threshold for these items, that when you exceed a threshold, you're then qualified for funding, potentially, assuming it's authorized. New Haven County is struggling to meet that threshold for individual assistance, which is why it was denied. There's currently an appeal being prepared by a number of towns in New Haven County. It's yet to be seen if that appeal will be successful or not. EMS billing is continuing to be ongoing. There remains a large, over $100,000 that remains in bills that are outstanding. We continue to work with the billing company to move that forward and bring those funds in. Again, reflecting back on the fact that for the last 3 months, we've provided ALS assistance on 51 different occasions. Those bills are ongoing. So again, I think it's just important to keep in mind, we've collected just over $40,000 since this occurred. We only went live with billing as of November 1st. It then takes several months to be recognized by Medicare in terms of billing, to establish relationships with the insurance companies, and so that is the reason why there's a large volume of money that is yet to be collected, that we continue to work with the billing company, and we have assurances that it's on the way. It's just a matter of once this starts coming in, it'll continue from there.
Chief, that's a very common practice in the insurance industry. There are bills that are incurred but not reported, but not processed. So it takes a significant amount of time between, especially for a company that's new, that's submitting these bills in, for it to go through the pipeline. And as all of our residents have probably experienced with claims of either homeowners or whatever it might be, they don't respond all that quickly. And once we're setting up a system such as this, they respond even more slowly. So, but once the flow begins, we should be receiving a constant flow of monies coming in on a monthly basis. That backlog should reduce, I'm sure. There'll always be a bit of a backlog because, again, it'll be incurred and reported, but then it takes time to process. So
Yeah, that's correct.
It's pretty much expected in the insurance industry and certainly in the business industry.
Additionally, the Assistance to Firefighters grant, which is through FEMA, we submitted 2 applications for this past year. One was for an apparatus. We had an opportune time to write a grant for an apparatus because the tower had yet to be delivered, so it wasn't technically in our possession. It then forced the averages of all of our apparatus to a higher number and made it possible for us to at least be competitive in the apparatus grant. The last year's figures that I received were that the federal government didn't start replacing apparatus until the average apparatus was 22 years old, and we were just about there. But keep in mind that the federal government is reviewing grants for municipalities all across our nation, and in some of these towns, they're using pickup trucks as fire engines. And of course, North Haven being AAA bond rated and being in the financial position that it is, writing a grant for an apparatus of $400,000 is a tough sell. But nonetheless, we tried, and we were denied for the apparatus. The second grant that we submitted had 2 pieces to it. The first was a purchase of approximately 30 sets of full turnout gear, PPE, personal protective equipment, commonly known as, it has a cost of approximately $3,500 per set. And we wrote a grant for 30 different sets to begin to replace some of the structural firefighting gear our firefighters wear. I have yet to hear on that. The second half of that grant, which was a washer extractor, gear washer and extractor and dryer, we were approved for of about $20,000, and we're pursuing the 3 written bids for that to move forward. I don't expect at this point to hear anything further on the personal protective equipment grant. The new grant for next year opens in only a matter of a couple of weeks, so typically everything's been awarded by that point. My feeling is that for this next year, seeing as though we got more or less part 1 of the grant approved this past year, I think we're going to go now for part 2 solely, and I think the odds are rather in our favor for next year. One thing I've mentioned next up on our agenda is the consortium testing. I've mentioned this to the commission in the past, and I believe it was an executive session because there were some various things that couldn't be discussed in a public forum regarding applications. We've been successful in the consortium testing. We were one of 10 different departments that participated in an entry-level exam for firefighters across the state. We were amongst towns such as Brantford, East Hartford, Fairfield, Naugatuck, New Canaan, Westport, and Wilton, as well as a couple others. There was no cost for this to North Haven, which is significant. Again, it was statewide. It was advertised on dozens of websites. The intent of myself and this commission, as I recall, is having discussion about was to increase our diversity of our applicants. When you have statewide support and advertising, and you're working on capturing an audience across the state, you have a much better chance of increasing the diversity of your applicants. That definitely seems to be the case, but there's a disclaimer for that. So there were 302 applicants that were successful in this throughout the state of Connecticut, 190 of which were certified as EMTs, but only 16 of which were paramedics, 2 of which have already been hired since this list became published about a month ago. Of the 302 applicants, 44 minorities and 17 were female. So we certainly were able to increase our diversity of candidates. But what we're finding is with only 16 paramedics on the list of the 302, should we hire paramedics, our options are very limited at that point. We've conducted lists on our own here, and we see 15 to 20 applicants that are paramedics. So I don't know that the consortium testing really is going to benefit us yet. I think this is only the first round. We'll have to see what happens the next time this comes around, if more departments are part of this or not. Again, it was no cost to us, and it's something I felt strongly about having to pursue. I think it just goes to show that paramedics are not as prevalent as we'd like to think that they are, especially those that want to become a firefighter. Mm-hmm. And that's all I have for unfinished business.
Any question of the chief regarding unfinished business? There are none, I'll accept the motion to accept. Do I hear a second? All in favor? Approved. New business of the department.
New business, the only thing I have is the CERT team to give the commission an update on that. We started our second class a couple of weeks ago. There are 14 students taking this class. I have some excellent North Haven CERT leadership in place that are continuing to work with Hamden and that have been doing this for a long time. And under the leadership of the North Haven individuals themselves, they put together a second class, and there's 14 individuals, and we look to continue to expand our CERT. One thing to keep in mind is we're through the summertime months now, but the CERT team was present for every concert on the green. They were present for the fair. They've been present for a number of other items as well. And that's the intent of the CERT, is to make sure that they're visible, help to spread the word on preparedness for emergencies, and that includes fires, and they're excellent advocates, and they're there for us in a time of need, should we need to open a shelter or a warming center or things of that sort, or of course respond to a scene. There is capital funding in place this year to purchase a vehicle, which we continue to explore, and I'm working on a few different angles to try to get them a vehicle so that they can be mobile and respond to a scene. It is likely not to happen more than once a year, but nonetheless, the best way to make them more functional is to get them a vehicle, which we're looking to do. And that's all I have for new business.
Very good. And, I certainly saw the certain members on the green, and they had a table set up, for folks that wanted information on that. So that, I absolutely commend those folks for the amount of time and effort they put in.
Sure.
Discussion of the good of the department.
The only thing I have at good of the department is Fire Prevention Week is coming up, October 7th through October 13th. Every year, there's a different theme associated with Fire Prevention Week. This year, it's look, listen, and learn. We're asking that you look for places in your home that fires can start, listen for the sound of the smoke alarm and know what to do when you hear it, and learn how to create and practice a fire escape plan. And that's all I have for good of the department.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Mike, buddy.
I'd like to reconvene the Tuesday, September 25th, 2018 North Haven Fire Commission meeting to order. Are there any public comments coming before this commission? I have received an email communication from a resident, Mary White, who asked me to read two questions in public comments. My name is Mary White, and I live on Summer Lane. I'm always concerned for the public health and safety and welfare. I support our police and fire departments, and I trust experts to know what is best. As resident of the town for 28 years, I would like to submit two questions. Would you be kind enough to read them on my behalf? One is relative to fire personnel, and one is relative to fire trucks. Number one, we have heard at the last Board of Finance meeting, several individuals stated, based on North Haven's population, fire department call volume, and type of size of the fire department, no more firefighter paramedics are needed, and therefore, the Board of Finance will not fund to hire any. Please explain why this is false. That's question number
Can I
one.
answer that first?
Yes, please,
Okay.
Chief.
Just that way there I can keep track of it.
Sure.
So the thing with, and I heard some of the comments regarding population, and I thought that I've addressed them in the past, but, when you look at predictors of how large or small a department should be, there's a number of variables you look at, and one of them is population, one of them. But there's many others to consider, and you can't look at just population in and of itself. It's in addition to population, it's daytime population. Some communities completely empty out, for lack of better words, during the day hours because everybody commutes and goes somewhere else. So there's evening population, bedtime population, daytime population, as well as how much commercial, how much industry zoning, what kind of critical infrastructure you have, what the presence of highways are, and so forth. There's a number of variables that go into determining the size of a department. And somebody had repeated to me some of the towns that I guess were mentioned recently, and I also can find how big departments are in population. If you want to look at just population, you can look at 5 towns that have population within 4,000 North Haven. And that's East Haven with 11 firefighters per shift. Branford, that just received a grant and is now going to 10 firefighters per shift. Westport, which is at 16 per shift and is within 4,000 North Haven. New London, which is at 16 per shift. And Guilford, which received a safer grant and went to 10 per shift. And Guilford's only been a paid department for a short number of years. So you can't just look at population. There's a number of factors you have to look at. Really, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do by looking at these different variables is you're trying to anticipate the size of your department. Well, you're anticipating the size of the department based on forecasting what call volume may be. Some of the towns that were compared don't respond to the same calls. Same thing with the 5I list. So there's variables with everything. You have to look at how your department is set up, what kind of incidents it's responding to. Are you providing ALS? Are you transporting? Things of that nature. I think that, if we're going to start comparing other towns, we need to be very careful in comparing like towns and contacting chiefs of departments from like towns. You can't look at one factor. And I also feel that one of the things that need to remain in the forefront of our minds is you're predicting the size of the department based on its anticipated call volume. We're continuing to miss 1 to 2 incidents per week, which are predominantly medical calls at this point, because the statistical odds are that with 50% of our calls, the call that is next up that we may not be able to respond to is a medical call. That has not always been the case, nor will it continue to be the case as we continue to increase our call volume. And I want to go back quickly and elaborate on a number I provided before. We are 447 more calls this year than we were 5 years ago. The total number was wrong. It's 2969. So just, I think that clarifies at least the first question, Chairman.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. The second question from Mrs. White is, numerous residents in town, as well as some members of the Board of Finance and the town attorney, are of the opinion that HB 7047 is a suggestion, doesn't have to be followed, and the fire trucks do not have to be replaced until the DMV condemns them. Furthermore, some individuals are of the opinion old fire trucks do not need to be replaced because they are rolling. Please explain why old fire trucks pose a safety risk to our firefighters, how they break down often, how difficult, if not impossible, it is to obtain replacement parts, how when they break down they are out of service for long periods of time, and how old fire trucks are outdated and are missing equipment that new fire trucks are not.
So the House bill that was passed, to refresh the audience's memory, we received correspondence from state elected officials that the interpretation of the House bill was that it adopted that NFPA code in its entirety that recommends a 25-year retirement of fire apparatus. I'm not about to make a legal decision myself, so I provided to a town attorney who provided an opinion on what her interpretation was of this. The decision was made to not replace the apparatus, and we continue to operate with it as such. We have apparatus that does exceed 25 years old, and it does a few things. We've spoken about it earlier this meeting, but there is an increase in maintenance cost, undoubtedly. If you had an old car that you were trying to keep on the road, there's an increase in maintenance costs. It lessens the reliability of the apparatus. I'd be lying to you if I said that there have been times that we go to respond with an apparatus that is one of our older apparatus and is not roadworthy as we're pulling out. There's alarms going off. There's something shaking within the apparatus itself. We inherently are forced to bring it to our contracted mechanic and have it fixed. But with that comes downtime. When you're juggling with multiple apparatus that are of aged time and they're 25 plus years old, I'm always trying to plug the holes. We have one reserve engine that we're able to put in service in different locations to be able to cover things like engine one being out of service now for a head gasket. So it becomes troubling at times to be able to balance the needs of the town, ensure that each of the 4 stations has at least one reliable functioning fire engine in it. And there have been times, as I reported at my workshop meeting, where we are down sometimes 2-3 engines, and I'm at the point where I'm nearly going to start browning out a firehouse because I don't have engines to put it in any longer. So it becomes problematic for us that the cost for repairs are in parts increase, and it can become troubling. You'll see me once again. I'm already preparing for next year's fiscal year budget. You'll see me once again propose a need to replace at least one apparatus. And if you recall back, I believe in 2014, the department identified 3 engines that need to be replaced, and since that time, only one has. So those same 2 apparatus that were identified at that time still remain in service today.
Well, I appreciate that response to Mary White. There was one additional agenda item on our agenda for today. We do have one motion that needs to be made. Commissioner Criscuolo, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we accept probationary member Chris Gamelin from Company 3, pending a national background check as of 9/20/18.
Do I hear a second to the motion? Second. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Any further public comments? Any other business coming before this commission? Here are none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
This meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.